We are live.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Atomic's Founder Hacks podcast, where we share something we've seen, something we've read and something we've learned that has been a source of inspiration for us, all the founders that we're working with. Let me start as always by saying a fantastic hello to Anthony Enright.
Hi Ben.
And an equally fabulous hello to Mr. Alex Moore.
Oh, you used an introductory word that I actually understand.
I did. I tried something different. I like to keep you on your toes. You know, it's the art of surprise, and yeah. So I hope it's acceptable to you both.
It is. Keep them guessing, Ben. Keep them guessing.
My role is to keep you guys
or keep
happy.
us guessing. Yeah, keep us guessing. Yeah.
Right. So, with enough frippery, I think Anthony Enright's going to kick us off this week with something you've seen, a real experience that you'd like to share and reflect on. Over to you, Anthony.
Really interesting one that comes up from time to time, and I wanted your thoughts on it. We titled it "Chicken or the Egg," and ultimately, there are some sectors out there at the moment that are going through a high level of growth, and I've got two organisations that I work with that are matching their growth with their sector growth, shall we call it. And one is been prepared for this growth pre-COVID, but has been prepared. So has set out, has budgeted for growth, and from an internal perspective has started to build the team to then be able to deal with that growth. The other organisation, however, has decided to grow quite considerably this year, but has decided to win the business first and then grow the teams behind it in order to reach that growth. And I just really wanted to put it out there and talk to you both about which do you think is the best? You know, do you aim for growth? Once you've won the business, you then work out how you're going to deliver that business, or do you invest beforehand, put the foundations in place, so as soon as you've won that business, you can just click of a finger and you can go, great, I can deliver that. And I'm seeing benefits to both, and obviously I'm seeing challenges for both. And I just wondered what your thoughts were when when you start to think about growth. Alex, what were your musings on this?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm also connected to a few businesses going through rapid growth at the moment, and have the luxury of having some money in the bank, so they've raised some money, and they're shortly be in the position to hire some extra people. So for me, how I would answer that one was, with an organic business that I've grown, I'd always wait for it to creak and hurt and almost break, and then hire the people. And that's held me in very good stead. It's kept me humble. It's allowed me to pay the bills, and it was quite stressful because, you know, as the founder, you end up doing a lot of the work. And I think, but ultimately that worked for me in that instance, that, you know, the chicken was before the egg. Now, on the other side of things, with these companies that are raising money, then I think it's the other way around, and go and raise the money, put the good plan together, figure out where the money needs to be spent and how it needs to be spent. And then I'd have no qualms personally with investing in people before the business was there. But yeah, so it depends was my answer.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Isn't that cheating?
It is.
Not
It
like
is
a completely cheating answer?
It's absolutely cheating. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, funnily, my answer is probably quite similar. The first thing when you shared the story, Anthony, was I just went, sales. It's sales. The answer is sales. The answer is always sales. In part because I remember there was an old adage that someone once shared with me, which is that there are very few questions in business you'll find yourself confronting that can't be answered by the answer more sales, which it's a kind of truism in some ways. Equally, I recognise that probably also speaks to a certain type of business, a certain size and stage. I think there is also the sort of, if we build it, they will come approach. I think I was reading an article the other week about the launch of Sony's original PlayStation. It's quite an interesting story, but clearly the level of investment to enter a market like that was incredible. And unquestionably, well, they couldn't sell it before it existed. They had to invent the thing. They then had to design it, build it, market it, and then they got the reward. So I think there's also always going to be that risk reward piece. But ultimately, for me, this is like it is the balancing act that I think every founder has to go through. It's always a just-in-time flip from one to the other as you grow your business. And I think many businesses confront. I was speaking to a founder a few weeks ago who was sharing his story that literally they had to sit down every year and say, we have to decide, are we going to grow or are we going to be profitable? Because they just knew they couldn't do both. They knew they just let go of that stress and tension of trying to do this mythical profitable growth thing, and then just said, we choose. This year we're going to grow, but we won't be profitable. Next year we won't grow, but we will be profitable. And that's how they did it. They sort of seesawed year on year. So I think ultimately what we're talking about here is strategy. The answer to this question is actually a pretty good way of saying this is actually what, when you're talking about this, you're talking about what your strategy is for your business, and it's about your market, it's about your product, and it's about your business operations and how they connect. But I think it's a fascinating one, and I think those people who are perhaps tormented by it, rest assured, everybody is. I don't know if that helps.
Just picking up something on what you said there, Ben, because Alex, very much sat on the fence there. One type of business, we're gonna let it creak, and we're gonna stretch our people, and then once we've won a sufficient amount of business, we will then deliver that. The other side of it is where invest, get the investment in, spend the money, get it to a point where you can then become more profitable. Do you think there's a difference between whether you're a product-based business versus a service-based business? Do you think there's a clear correlation there? As in, if you've got a product, you have to invest in it, you have to get the product. So there has to be that form of investment, either personal or from external, in order to get to the product to a certain point. Whereas a service-based business is much easier to just go, no, win it, and then we'll work out how we're going to deliver to it, because it's just people-based.
Probably is, I reckon.
I'd probably challenge that. I mean, having been involved in both, I'd challenge it, because actually services take work too. Services need designing. Service needs the person to be there ready to deliver them. Services, so it doesn't, just because you're a service business doesn't make this problem any easier. Equally, a product business, we've all heard the stories of businesses who've gone out and sold the order for 10,000 units, and then come back to the office and go, oh my God, how are we going to deliver this? And desperately making the phone call to the factories to try and catch up with the production. So I genuinely think it equally applies to both those types of business. And if anything, the risk is probably equal on both sides, in my experience. Others may find it different.
Yeah, and I guess from what you've said there, it also springs to mind that when you're a young business and when you've just started out, you do tend to say yes to everything and then work out exactly how you're going to deliver it. Whereas the businesses that I've seen in the last couple of weeks, they are mature businesses. They have been in existence for 4 to 5 years. They turn over a fair amount of money. So it's about that next level of growth. And as you say, I think it comes down to strategy and making that early decision rather than falling accidentally into one area or the other. So thank you for that, gents. We now move on to our
I've got one thing to add.
Forgive me, Alex.
Yeah, my apologies. There's one thing I would disagree with you there, though, Ben. You said the answer is always sales. If you're a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the answer is always 42. So that's the only thing I'm going to say.
To life, the universe and everything.
42.
I can't believe I just apologised then for a joke. Okay.
It's true. Anyway, it's true. 42. Sorry. Yes, Anthony, I interrupted you.
Okay. All right. So we're moving on to our red now, and Ben, you've got a great one this week.
I like this one. Yeah, it was really simple. I can't remember how I bumped into it, but it was an article from entrepreneur.com. But it was Elon Musk's 2 rules to learn anything. And I'm always a little sceptical when I read that Elon Musk has said or done something, because it seems to me that he does the huge amount, and I sort of wonder sometimes if things are attributed to him without his knowledge or involvement at all, bless him. But I did like these, and you can actually perhaps see it in some of the ways in which we've seen him build his businesses. And it's 2 rules for learning anything. The first rule was always grow your learning like a tree. In other words, start with the big bits, start with the trunk. Make sure you've got a solid underpinning of the foundations and the fundamentals before you then start to go, where are the branches in this field? Where are the leaves and the twigs? It's interesting, a lot of people will not do that. Instead, they'll just start trying to cope with all the little details and all the little bits in a particular field or topic, and end up really not having a solid basis in that. They may appear to know, but actually all they're doing is dealing with details. There's a lovely metaphor they use of, when you're learning, don't just run around collecting every stick on the ground. Grow your learning like a tree instead. So that was rule number 1. Rule number 2 was you cannot remember what you cannot connect. And I thought this was fascinating because, again, it works with the tree metaphor that when you're trying to learn a new topic or area, each piece of your learning needs to connect to something that is already known. And in that way, your learning builds on itself. Again, the contrary is a lot of people perhaps end up frustrated because they're trying to learn something new and sort of attack it piecemeal, seeing each part of what they're trying to learn as separate and independent, and unable to draw it all together into a complete whole. And I just thought this was really interesting and inspiring, particularly because I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely found over the course of the businesses I've been involved in and the years, you pretty often find yourself in a situation where, as Alex said in the last topic when we looked at the scene, sometimes you just got to go and learn it. And it might not be in your comfort zone, it might not be something you know anything about as a founder of a business, but it falls to you. I remember sharing a story once that in one of my first sort of roles leading a small team, the toilet broke. We had one bathroom for us all to share, and the toilet broke. I was about 23. And I realised that, oh my goodness, the thing that's going to get in the way today is that if the team haven't got a toilet to use, they're all going to leave because they literally had no bathroom. So I went on Google and I learned how to fix a toilet, because that was the thing holding the business back that day. And I fixed the toilet for them. I think it involved a paperclip and a bit of gaffer tape, but I think it's a fascinating thing, guys, that your ability to learn things really fast, I just think is so important for anyone who's founding a business for themselves. And I love these 2 rules: grow your learning like a tree, and you won't remember what you can't connect. So that's my little red, and we'll share a link in the blog as well if people want to have a look at it. What do you reckon? Mr. Enright.
Yeah, the one that resonates for me the most is you cannot remember what you cannot connect. And because I've got a dreadful memory. I mean, the kids come home from school and they talk about, homework, and they talk about, how do I do this and how do I do that? And you're frantically, secretly Googling the answer, because my memory from my education is just horrendous, and you think how long you spend in education, and I can remember very little. So when I heard that quote about you cannot remember what you cannot connect, it's about those connections. It's about what's real, and what's important. And I think the brain is very clever at being able to remove at times what isn't important, so you can concentrate on and make those connections, so that you can actually really focus on the job in hand. So that's my excuse anyway for when I forget things or when I can't quite remember things is it's not real for me today. I'm going to block the rest out. I'm just going to concentrate on my connections and what I can connect and piece together to either provide a solution or achieve what I'm looking to achieve.
That's great. I'm quite relieved though, because I thought you were going to say you had a terrible memory, and when your kids came home, you were like, "Who are you?" No. I'm glad that you remember your beautiful children, at the very very least. But I think it's very true that yes, we do. I think education sometimes does let us down, because I think education doesn't always grow your learning like a tree. I think education says, here's a list of things you need to remember that have nothing to do with each other, and we ask people to regurgitate that back, and we call that learning. And I think for me, these two rules remind us that's not what learning is. But Alex, let's bring you in too. What do you reckon? Do these make sense to you?
Yeah, no, I like stuff about Elon Musk. He's a bit of a genius. He's also, I think, completely bonkers. But I like him. I would like to meet him one day. I'd like to have a beer with him, actually. And I thought this was very profound. I like it. Learning things in isolation. So, going back to school, you learn a date of some battle. What the hell does that mean? The interconnectivity of information. Ben, you and I were having a chat about the London Interdisciplinary School, which is a new university that me and my wife invested in about a year ago. And they talk about how their approach to an interdisciplinary degree would be to take a topic and then debate all the things that are connected to it. It might be economics, it might be physics, it might be biology, it might be mathematics. And by having this sort of interdisciplinary approach to knowledge, to learning, to building things, to building a business, to you developing as a leader of a business, it's just not memorizing a date in isolation. They build upon things. And I thought that's what really struck home with me, how clever the interconnectivity of learning is, and the compound interest nature of learning, of reading, of educating yourself as you grow older, as you grow as a human being, as you grow into your business. And I found, as a founder of a business, I had to grow as an individual as my business grew. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to run it anymore. So yeah, it made me think. As always with Elon Musk, it made me think and smile. So thanks for sharing that one. Anthony.
So quick question for you based on that. You'd have a pint with Elon Musk, but would you let him look after your puppy?
No.
For those of you that haven't got a clue what we're talking about, you need to listen to our previous podcasts.
Well, on that note, guys, thank you. I think, there's a lot to reflect on there. Very, very, very useful to and I love, Alex, your point around the interdisciplinary approach. I'm a huge fan. That if we all can have a little more breadth. We love these deep specialists these days, but actually having breadth of knowledge and learning, especially for founders, I think just puts you in a good position to face whatever life throws at you. And goodness knows, life can throw some strange stuff at you when you're leading a business. Shall we move on? I think, Alex, it's straight back at you, because you've got a learned for us this week.
I do have a learn. Usually you do the learn, Ben.
I do the learn. I know, I always do the abstract
I'm doing
stuff.
It this week.
I'm pleased for taking a turn.
Take that. So no, it was just a little look at the world. It's just it's this problem. It was a realization more than a learn this week. That I'm really not very good at reacting. I'm a planner, and the way the world is now in this country, may or not be aware that you've got these different levels of tiers now that the government's introduced, which are particularly damaging to hospitality businesses. And just where you think you've got something where you want it to be, a bit of government legislation comes in and all your plans are ripped up and you just have to react to it. And my learn was how I hate this constant reacting to everything, and not the plans I put in place 3 or 4 days ago to look after a business are then completely ripped up and you have to redo the whole thing again. And I'm just thinking, I just don't like it. I don't like this uncertainty. This lack of being able to plan is having a very, very a detrimental effect on a number of businesses I'm connected to, and it's kind of heartbreaking. So I wanted to throw that one back at you two. Are you a reactor, or do you like reacting, or do you like planning? Anthony, what do you think?
What I think as a founder you have to do both, and you're definitely going to have more of a sweet spot toward one or the other. I do like the kind of immediate pressure and sometimes stress of needing to react. I do like the buzz that comes from that. I do like the hands on deck to get over this issue that we've been thrown at. And I think it's only in recent years that I've learned the true benefit of being more proactive and sitting down and planning and strategizing. But I think if you come from an effective kind of execution type world and you learn how to do the strategy, that can really work very well, because then you know how to implement the plan that you've set out. And what I've seen one organisation do really well during lockdown, they're in an industry that has, completely shut down. They're reopened now, but only just. And what they did is the leader needed to keep everybody calm. The leader needed to keep everybody calm, and they used the time to just sit and say, what are all these things on the shelf that we've had to do, that we wanted to do, that we never got round to, these various ideas, or what are the things we can do to best support the business so as soon as we're open we can jump ahead of the competition. Now, I get that you have to be in a fairly cash-rich or certainly solvent position in order to be able to do that. But they've reopened now for the last few weeks. They may be under the threat of closing again. But what's actually happened to them is they're now 20% up on last year, because they took the time. The leader was able to take the weight and say, don't worry about your jobs. Don't worry about this. Yes, you're going to have to take furlough. Yes, you're going to be taking in some instances a fairly hefty pay cut because of the restrictions with furlough. But actually, we are going to have a business when we come out of this. And by putting people into that and saying, what is it you can do during this time in order to volunteer, in order to support and help what it looks like when we go live again, I've seen phenomenal results from that. So I think if you're in a position now where your business is locked down, yes, of course, finances are a huge concern. But if you're able to keep that wolf from the door, what can your team do? What can they volunteer to do? What can they be kept busy with that's going to put you in the best position when you reopen? And I'm just using that based on one example, but I've seen them do it incredibly well.
I think that's fascinating in terms of leading through it, and I massively empathise, Alex, to be honest, because there's a phrase or there's a measurement that they used to use, and it is probably not true, but it's quite entertaining, so I'm going to share it anyway. When measuring cortisol levels and stress, there was a benchmark they set, which was as stressed as a highly stressed rat. And how you make a highly stressed rat is you take a rat and you restrain it for 10 seconds, then you let it go. Then you restrain it again for another 10 seconds, and then you let it go. And then you restrain it again for another 10 seconds, and then you let it go. This causes immense stress for the poor rat, and those sort of hormonal stress levels we use as a benchmark. This is highly stressed, a highly stressed rat, and I think most of us right now are feeling as stressed as a highly stressed rat, because that is exactly a corollary for what we're all going through. You have these moments of release, but then suddenly you are restrained again, and it's textbook how to make people feel terrible. So I think at one level it's not a surprise, and being forced to move from planning to reacting, I think is a psychological stressor as much as anything else. I think we can forget about sort of personal preference, because there is some, but I think we're sort of beyond that. I guess for me, what I would love to be able to kind of say to myself perhaps is, so how can we be if we're in that sort of situation where there's that constant change of goalposts? And the word that came to mind as Anthony was speaking and as you were speaking was can we be navigators? Can we be navigators? Because what does a navigator do? Well, a navigator, you've got a destination in mind, but the navigator knows the territory between there and there, and chooses the route as you go along, around each boulder, around each pebble, negotiating each obstacle. And in this way, those obstacles, perhaps rather than becoming stressors, become this is the next thing we need to navigate. We just need to navigate. How do we navigate this piece? How do we navigate the next piece? So rather than that feeling of constantly being thwarted, we maintain clarity in where we want to be, but we focus instead on making that incremental progress and just confronting each little obstacle as we go through. And maybe that's a mindset we could all try adopting, because otherwise we will end up as stressed as a highly stressed rat. I don't know if that helps, Mr. Moore.
That does. My goodness, that's profound. Actually, it is exactly how I'm feeling at the moment, like a highly stressed rat. My goodness, yeah. No, that really struck home. That was a good last point to discuss, I think, Ben. Thank you for that.
Not at all. Well, gentlemen, I have a feeling we are at time. That felt meaty and fascinating. I've learned as ever. So I'll try, as I tend to do, to summarise that rangy conversation.
Good luck with that one.
I know, right? So I guess, we're saying chicken or the egg? Well, maybe it's both, actually, and maybe that's a matter of the strategy for your company. It doesn't need to be one or the other. The very act of leading and founding a business and creating its strategy is to resolve that conflict between sales first or putting the organisation operations in place. Can we learn anything to help us do that by growing our learning like a tree, and to remember we can't remember what we cannot connect, so building out our trees of understanding of what we're confronting. And finally, it's a tough time. We're having to react instead of planning, and when we do plan, those plans are ripped up on an almost daily basis, and it is hard, and that's okay. Maybe we can shift our mindset to find new ways of thinking about it and avoid becoming as stressed as a highly stressed rat. That will be the last time I say as stressed as a highly stressed rat today, apart from that one. So it remains to say, as ever, an enormous thank you to Anthony Enright.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Alex.
And an equally fulsome thank you to Mr. Alex Moore.
Thank you, gentlemen, and thanks for listening.
Remember, everybody, that Founder Hacks is not only a podcast, it is also a blog. If you would like to subscribe, please head over to www.atomics.co.uk, and you can have your Founder Hacks in words as well as in the written word as well as the spoken. I've been Ben Thomas. We are Atomics, and this has been Founder Hacks. Thank you very much indeed for listening.